welcome to this edition of The Fourth Gear, sponsored by Classic Auto Insurance. Today, my special guest is Lauren Fix, the car coach. You've probably seen her videos. You've most possibly read some of her books. You've seen her out in the field. She's been part of the automotive world forever. She's been on every possible media you can think of. I've known Lauren for a long time, going way back before computers and the internet, everything else, dating myself a little bit, when she was a very young girl. And Lauren, thank you. Thank you for being with us today. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. Yes, we have known each other a long time. I used to do ad sales and deal with people, and then we crossed paths way back then. Back when we used to actually, cut and paste the letters for the ads.
That's right. That's right. Now, you were born in Detroit. Your dad was involved in the automotive industry with the big three, I think all three of them at some point. Yep. At what point did you kind of realize that you got this automotive bug?
Well, I was about 10 years old. My father lost his job. He had actually is a nuclear engineer as well. He worked for Fermi too. And so he lost his job, picked up a job in Buffalo and started creating a product called stainless steel brakes. And I'd go out in the garage and go, what are you doing? As a kid, no one told me, go away, little girl, or go play with dolls. He'd say, I'm bleeding brakes. Do you want to help? I'm like, what's that? And he would stop and take out paper and explain to me about air and braking systems, or if he was, changing a clutch, what's a clutch, what's a manual transmission. And he would literally explain everything. We had a 70 Barracuda in the garage, a 67 Corvette. We bought all these new, a 55 Thunderbird. He was a charter member of the Thunderbird Club, one from each brand as he worked there, and a boat. So needless to say, there was always something that needed to be done. And so I would just go out there and say, what's going on? And I became the tool jockey and started learning about cars, and no one told me I couldn't, but I was more of a tomboy. I loved Matchbox cars and helping my dad in the garage, and he worked a lot of hours. So when he was home, it was the time to spend with dad. So it sort of became that sort of connection, which was great because I passed that along to my kids as well.
well, that's awesome. And tell us about your first car. I've read some things about your first car, but you can tell me firsthand how you found it. I think you weren't quite driving age yet when you bought it. Yeah, so right. Tell me about your first car.
Well, I was a huge fan of the Rockford Files. I thought James Garner was the coolest, seen a lot of stuff about him, and I wanted a Firebird. And I looked at the time, it was a swap sheet. You look in the paper, looking for the car, you circle and you call. I could not find one. So I found that there was a 76 Camaro. Unfortunately, it was cream colored with a 305, not a great car. But it was an automatic, which I really didn't want, but okay, fine. And it was the price point because I'd been working for my dad and he would pay me a little bit of money and I would just save it, just keep saving it. I was not a spender. You get your allowance, you save it. I wouldn't spend it on junk. And so I went up, I rode my bike to, it's not even there anymore. It's called Clarence Used Car Lot. And I just said to this guy, actually, I know him still. His name is Chuck. And I said, hey, I want to buy this car. And he's looking at me like, I'll sell it to you. It was a used car lot. You know what I mean? I looked at the car. My dad came and looked at the car. I paid him cash. And he's like, well, you can take the car because things were a little different than you didn't have to go get a title and go to the DMV. He just signed the back of the registration. And I couldn't drive it home. So they delivered it to the house. And it sat in the driveway. I must put 10 coats of wax on it, change the oil twice, clean the interior. I was very excited to drive it. But the funny thing is that car did not stay long in the driveway. So I was, that was like the summer. My birthday's in February. So I got my license in February, literally when you could, 10 days afterwards. My parents were busy. So I called it's called Claire Amherst Driving School to teach me to drive. Literally, I had super confidence. 10 days later, I went and took the test. And I know that the instructor was like, you're 10 days over 16 and you're coming here with this confidence. Fine, here's your first one. Park between two parallel cars. And that was that parallel parking as part of the test. There's no backup cameras and warnings. I did it perfectly. And I really blew the instructor away. They're like, okay. So they signed it right there at the time and you left with your license. Things are a little different now, obviously. But as I started to drive it by that June, a friend of mine said, hey, listen, we're going to an autocross. I go, what the heck is that? He goes, there's a bunch of pylons in a parking lot. Fastest time wins. I'm like, I'm in. Very competitive. I'm like, I'm in. I may lose, but I'm going to try my darndest. So I went out and I realized this thing was a stone. It was a couch, just body roll everywhere. And I said, this is horrible. Like, I'm embarrassed. This thing was so slow. And it wasn't that I wasn't qualifying my driving at the time. I just realized this thing was really bad. So a guy that I had met there, who I actually ended up dating for 4 years, said, jump in my Mustang. It was a 79 Mustang Cobra, manual transmission. He goes, try this now. And my time was amazingly faster. And that's when I said, so literally that next day, I put my car for sale in the paper, and I bought a 79 Mustang Cobra with a 302, they call it an S-Rod transmission, which is a 3-speed with an overdrive, and that horrible 7.5-inch axle and TRX wheels. I'm really dating myself because I laughed. 190 65 or 390, which is like a nothing millimetric tire, which you can't even find these days. And I started racing that autocross, and then that October, which is interesting, I got a chance to go to Nelson Ledges, which is a racetrack just south of Cleveland. It's about 2 hours from my house. They said, we need help in the pits. We need people, directing traffic. And because it was just a regional SCCA race, and timing and scoring. And I'm like, awesome, I'll do it. I had no idea that that was a turning point for me. So as you probably know, we're talking in the 80s, early, someone said to me, hey, listen, do you want to ride in the pace car? Thinking we'll scare the little girl, right? So I said, okay. So I got in the passenger seat. Now, mind you, there could have been anything behind me, a production class, a Formula Vs, Formula Fords, anything. No, it was GT1. And I turned around and I saw this field of ground pounding V8 cars. I went, I'm doing that. So I went home, gutted my car over the winter, and it's enough I could drive it to school because I was still in high school. And I used to put the slicks in the back of my car and in the spring, and I went to, take the driving school and everything. And everyone's like, where's your boyfriend, your father, your dad, some guy to help you? I'm like, I know what I'm doing. And I did. And I just did it all myself. I just was the way it was. And I did pretty good. I remember having one fun story was, this is a Corvettes of Cleveland event. It was like a solo one. So fastest time around wins, same thing, except it's on a track. And I said, all right, I'll do that. And I'm sure those people still remember this day. They said, we're going to put you in the ladies class. And I go, how does the car know I have boobs or not? It doesn't. I said, if I'm faster than you, then I win. And I pushed back, and they finally said, fine, run with the guys. You're going to lose. Yeah, I have a picture of me from 1982 with the track record in that class and first. So, and that was sort of like, boom, and there, you know what I mean? So that was interesting. It's a different time and era these days. Because remember, GT1, even back then, if you were regional, you could get away with a stock car, basically a showroom stock kind of modified car. Today, and I have old GT1 SCCA Trans Am cars, if you don't have a full two-frame chassis, carbon fiber body, and a purpose-built car, forget it. I mean, they're putting in X-Track transmissions that are more than 5 of those cars are worth at the time. I mean, you're talking like 70 grand. So it's a whole different era when they let a lot of people get away with it in order to fill the classes. So I was never very fast in GT1, but I got my license. And it was funny because during that time, about 1986, I met my husband, who had beautiful 65, 66 Shelbys, and he was winning at shows. And I would go to the races and he would go to the shows, and we were just dating. I go, we need to find like some happy medium here. And we found SVRA, which was so cool. So I taught him how to drive. He's an amazing driver. He had just that proper mindset as an engineer. He's technical. He's got the art, a little bit of art because he's a restorer. And all together, he's raced Trans Am. He's won unbelievable quantities of vintage races, SCCA races, Trans Am races, Trans Am championships, prototypes. We've raced in Europe, and we're still racing, both of us. So, and we got our kids into racing too. So they didn't get very far beyond go-karts because I couldn't afford all of us. But all from one car sort of created this whole storyline to racing today. And I still race. I have an old Paul Gentilozzi chassis. It's a 1999 Johnson Controls Mustang, but it's currently bodied as a Jaguar that Tommy Dreese drove in his rookie season. And this year, actually, my husband's qualifying for GT1. So he said, I need your car to do it because my car is still being built. And I said, do it. So he took the Jaguar out Lime Rock weekend, which is Memorial Day, and raced in the Trans Am series with it. And of course, he won the class because I don't expect anything less from him.
Well, you taught him how to drive. How could he not win?
I'm a great instructor. And that's the problem is after you have kids, and this is really true. This is probably a lot of real professional race car drivers like Danica Patrick and don't have kids, is it does mess up your head. Now, when Shelby was born, she's now 30 years old, but when she was born, change my mental perspective, and I tried to correct it. But once my second one was born, and I did race while I was pregnant with both of them, which you can't do anymore, thanks to me, I got caught. So, but it does change you. So I've become a phenomenal instructor and a consistent driver, and sadly not as fast as I used to be. And age, I'm sure, has something to do with it too.
Well, we talk about all the changes, all the things that we've seen. You have experience in almost every sector of the automotive aftermarket, if you will. You've taught racing, you've raced, you've been in the restoration part, you do new car reviews. And if anyone hasn't seen one of your reviews, which I can't imagine, but they're amazing. You do such a great job. You do a good walk around. You talk about the cars. You say its competitor car might do this or have this, but this is what I like. And every time you present something, it's like it's completely different, and that's very, very difficult to do. So I congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Look at what's happening today. Let's talk about, we have a gas crunch, $5 a gallon, the worst ever in American history. And they're pushing electric cars, which I know we can really go a long way with that, because you and I are together on that.
Yeah, I'm not interested in buying one. It may be for someone else. It just doesn't work for me.
Yeah. So what do you think we're headed here? It's a very confusing time. It's very difficult for most families today to think they could fill their Toyota up for $30. Now it's costing them $100.
Oh no, I'm there with you. I'll tell you, it's funny. I've been called by many, many people, from Neil Cavuto to David Bellavia, you name the radio and TV, they call me the Nostradamus of the auto industry, because I can kind of predict what's going to happen. They're pushing too hard. The federal government has been pushing too hard for electric cars. They're saying if gas is too expensive, such an arrogant statement, just really infuriates me. Debbie Stabenow, Michigan senator, says, oh, if cars are too expensive, you should just go buy an electric car. Okay, well, let's just look at the facts here. Based on Kelley Blue Book's numbers, the average price of an electric vehicle is $59,000. Her constituents, the people that supposedly voted for her, make an average salary of $54,000. So you're going to give a year and change of your whole salary to buy an electric car. But wait, insurance is twice as expensive. You need a home charger. That's $2,000, and installed by a certified electrician, $2,000. So where are these people going to get the money plus charging in other places? Now, some new cars do include charging, but if you've ever gone to a charging station, and because I test everything, I've literally done everything from Lucid to the Chevy Bolt EV, you name it, I've done it from high to low. And going to the charging station is ridiculous. We live in an instant society where people stand in front of the microwave and go, come on, you're kidding me. Now remember, I'm used, like you were, waiting for boiling water. We used to go do something and come back. Now people have very short attention spans. Look at just social media in general. They're swiping through Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, Truth Social, whatever. And I'm on every platform, literally every platform. My name, Lauren Fix. But because people have no patience, when you go to a charging station, the fastest ones you can get, if you can find one, and there's no one in the charging station, and it works. This is another problem we're having. You pull up and you plug in, you've got to wait between 10 and 80 minutes, maybe longer, an hour and a half, in order to get enough charge. Now, they don't like you to charge to 100%, which is how they calculate the range. So say at 100% charge, you get 250 miles of range, but they don't like you to charge to 100%. And the reason they don't like you to is it wears out the battery earlier. They want you to charge to 80%. Sounds like a cell phone, right? We've all been through that, and cell phones, batteries wear out. So if you think about that, that means you're going to go there, you're going to charge. Okay, so if it's at a gas station, so you go in, you get a cup of coffee, maybe a sandwich, and you're like, okay, now that's 15 minutes, 45 minutes to wait. We don't know. And there's a lot of factors that have not been discussed. And this is a massive concern that I want people to think about. They tell you, don't put your cell phone to your ear. You could get brain cancer. Use an earpiece like I'm using today, right? Okay, great. So people understand that. I don't want the phone in my ear. I'll try not to do that. Or I'll use a speaker. Great. But you can sit on a bank of batteries that are charging an alternating current, which has magnetic field with you and your family. And then you have that same charging station at your house. Are we crazy? Is this something we're going to find out 10 years from now, just like we find out with everything else with the government? Asbestos is a great idea. Oh, we were wrong. We should use lead in the paint. It lasts forever. Oh, that's a bad idea. See, this is the problem. Don't put fat in food. You won't get fat. Oh, we were wrong. See, the problem with the government is they push so hard for whatever their agenda is that they literally put the cart in front of the horse. And this is what they're doing in this case. They're shoving this agenda of Green New Deal toward people when the total real truth is that wind and solar can only support about 18% of the total load on the grid. And I put out a segment about the truth about the grid. It cannot support everyone on electric cars. And they're already talking about black and brownouts, and that's with 3% of sales being electric and less than 5% of electric cars on the road just today. So you're gonna take millions of cars off the road. This is their goal. We're gonna take millions of cars off the road. Everyone's gonna drive electric. Really? How are you gonna upgrade the grid? You need nuclear power. They don't want nuclear power. They don't want you to use natural gas. They don't want you to use coal. New York State's trying to pass a law that says you can't have natural gas buildings. Well, that's an issue. So as you start thinking about all of these things and you start realizing that if the grid can't support it, consumers can't afford the vehicles, it's very arrogant for them to say, you know what, you should go buy one. You should buy one. Well, that's great. Isn't that nice? But it doesn't work for everyone. I live out in an area where there's no mass transit. I don't live near the city. And I love my vintage collector cars. We have a lot of Mustangs and Shelbys, and I have Porsches. And no, I'm not selling my vehicles. I'm going to be like Mad Max down the road. Where everybody else is sitting in darkness, I'm on my way. And I have a diesel SUV, and everyone's like, oh, diesel's expensive. Yes, it is. It's very expensive. But I also get better fuel economy. I get more miles to the gallon. I get 38 miles to the gallon in my SUV on the highway. But if worse comes to worse, I'm going to the donut store. I'm filtering out the donut. I'm adding a quart of kerosene, and I got a full tank.
You had talked briefly a little bit about you being a female, doing all the things that you were doing. Where's the guy to help you wrench, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. When you look at the automotive industry, more and more, I started going to SEMA back in the 80s. And
me too.
It was rare that you saw a lady who owned a business, or it was almost all, probably 95, 96% male oriented.
Right. Right. Otherwise, they were booth babes. They were booth babes then.
Yes, that's true.
I think they still have them in some places.
Not counting them.
Right.
We're counting people
Right.
that are actually doing something in the hobby.
A few exceptions. A couple of friends of mine.
How do you see that today? How do you see that? I see it changing. I see more and more women getting involved, and it's a great change. Everybody brings such a new perspective, and it's how do you see that progressing? Where do you see that going as we move forward?
Lots of changes, actually. So I know Cammie Edelbrock, her father's Vic. Yep. She's been doing this a long time, probably not as long as me, but her and her sister are involved in the business. I think they've sold the business since. There's a few other women that come and go, not just in racing. I would say when I started racing, there's maybe 100 women in racing. Now there's thousands. A friend of mine, Danny Koch, is doing a Mercedes driving school out of Canada, and he's teaching women from all around the world to race. So a car doesn't know the difference, and neither does a business. So so if you are really good at running a business, and there's a lot of talented women out there that bring some really unique perspectives. And I think the industry has always had women. It's just they've kind of been squashed, shall we say. My father always told me to be like an M&M. He said, be hard on the outside. You can be as soft as you want on the inside, but never let them see you cry, because that's just human, right? So being in the business, people kind of knew who they were dealing with. They knew I was pretty tough, but I'm not really that tough for those people that know me. But, I started selling brakes for my dad's business, and everyone go, oh, you're going to SEMA, Carlisle, whatever. And I go, oh, no, I can't. I got to stay back. The truth was, I was still in high school or college, and I didn't want them to know how young I was. And now friends of mine that are in the business, a friend of mine who's California Mustang's lead buyer, finally met me many years later. He's like, holy crap. He goes, you were really young when I met you. And I said, yes. And that's why I wanted anyone to meet me. But my voice was deep enough, and I come across strong enough, because this is the way I talk. I can't help the way you speak. We all speak the way we do. That I have this confidence in my voice, and just it is what it is. And a lot of guys would call on the phone and then ask for me specifically. They would wait. I was the national sales manager at a company that's no longer in business called Stainless Steel Brakes. I sold out in '96. The new owner buried it, unfortunately. But we own a company called Classic Tube now, and we make prevent tubing products for automotive and industrial applications. But the cool thing is on the phone, once people start talking to you, they're like, oh, I got a girl on the phone. And I kind of feel the same way too. Like they're reading off a script. They'd ask me questions, stupid questions like, well, I've only got 4 lug on my Mustang and I want to put a disc brake kit. And I'd go right into it. Well, you need a spindle with this part number, and then you can buy this kit and it costs this much. Do you know what you're doing? Do you have a set of tools? If not, I can guide you through it. And they were like, because you overwhelm them, where a guy can go, yep, that'll work. So when I do a lot of I do a lot of speaking engagements, but as a keynote speaker, one of the things I always say is, when a guy walks into an auto parts store, you're the guy, the chief, the dude, you're the stud, you're the man. How can I help you, bro? For me, it's like, honey, do you have a list? Like I'm stupid. So I love it because I always I need those NGK plugs right there, the 35 heat range right there. And they're like, but a lot of people know who I am now. It's been a long time, but I'll never forget walking into the local auto parts store and the guy's just like, oh, you sure you know what you need? Yeah, I know what I need. Just give me the damn plugs, So I get it, but things have changed. Now they're hiring a lot of women service writers. There's a huge opening in the auto industry for service writers at dealerships, for women in the auto parts business. There's premiums being paid, bonuses being paid, because they realize that women make 85% of the buying decisions. And they also own over 62% of the cars on the road. And they have 95% veto power, whether it's new or used or service. So if they feel they've been treated unfairly, they don't like it, maybe because girls talk differently than guys. Women will say, yeah, I went over to, Pep Boys and needed some wiper blades. And the guy installed them for me. It was great. I sat in the car with the kids. It was done, 2 seconds. A guy will never go, I went to Pep Boys, had someone put the blades on for me. They'd be like, what? You're not a car person. You know what I mean? And when you realize how simple it is, anyone can do it. But it's interesting how there's a different dynamic. And that dynamic has now come into the auto industry, where you go to SEMA or you go to the Apex show, because I work both shows. I handle the B Car Careware campaign. Or I'm talking on the Weather Channel or Fox Weather, because I'm on both, or the news. I love to tell people that they can do these things. And it creates a different environment where before they might go, oh, sure, some guy can do it. Why can't a girl do it? I always say, if I can do it with nails, you can do it,
And there were things when my daughter started driving. My daughter is also 30, and she started driving. I wanted her to know basic things. I wanted her to know, how do you change a tire? And I didn't tell her. I made her change the tire. I made her jack the car up, and change the tire. And yeah, back then we had the stupid little donuts, and I had to explain the whole donut thing. But
now it's
really
tire inflation products. Yeah.
I said, you can't wait and hope that somebody, male or female, is going to stop and help you on the side of the road. It may be late at night. There may not be a lot of traffic. You have to get out of wherever you are. So you need to understand some things. These are things that you need to do. You need to understand, if you can't start the car, what are some easy things, easy tips to know and look at.
Smart.
And those are important. Exactly what you were saying, teaching your daughter. And you've also, let's talk a little bit about, I want to talk about this one thing real quick. You're involved in, oh my gosh, just everything. It goes crazy. I have a list that's so long I can't even begin to go through it. But I know you, and I know when you get involved in something, your mindset, you are focused, you're a trigger, and you go after it. And you're there to make a difference because you believe, because you're so passionate. You're not doing it because it's, well, maybe if I do this, it'll help me get from point A to point B. There's a reason that you're doing it. And today we're dealing with, in our hobby, our youth. At what point do you think the youth really start to get involved in our industry? And maybe that's a 2-part question. I think buying their first car to big involved.
You'll be surprised. You'll be surprised at my answer.
Okay.
These kids know more about these cars than you can shake a stick at, because the game, they love the internet. They know how to use all the gaming stations. So I used to have an apartment in New York City, and they delivered me a Lamborghini Urus, which I was going to use for Fox and Friends. So I had to run upstairs. So my daughter sat in the car because that's like $250,000 SUV, and it kind of stands out in the crowd. So I ran upstairs to get what we needed, and I put it in the vehicle. And as I got down, these little kids that's how they do it in New York City. They all kind of walk hand, they hold each other's hand, and the teacher leads and follows. And one kid stops dead, and he goes, he's got to be like 5 years old, like kindergarten. He goes to his buddy, pinch me. Is this real? I'm like, how does a 5-year-old know what an Urus is, right? I asked him, I said, do you know what this is? He goes, it's a Lamborghini Urus. And he starts spouting off like, I drive thousands of cars. I can't memorize every horsepower, torque rating, 0 to 60. This kid's spouting off torque specs. He's talking about wheel diameters. He goes, do you know this thing has this many G's? It's this much drag coefficient. It does 0 to 60. And I'm like, he's 5 years old. And I go, how do you know any of this? And of course, the teacher's like trying to find out why I'm talking to this kid. He says, oh, I use iRacing, and I think this is great. And I can tell you even more about the car. I'm like, I bet you can tell me more about cars than I know, because this kid memorized all this because they're so passionate, whether it's a Subaru WRX or it's a Mustang, GT500, or it's a Lamborghini Urus, a Ferrari. All these kids know cars, and manufacturers are very aware of that. And they're trying to build brand loyalties early, or dreams. Mercedes does that with their AMG GT. They do it with their G-Class. They do it with Porsche's doing it as well. So they're all getting involved in the gaming systems early. So as these kids grow up, so when I go to a Cars and Coffee event, which I try to find some sort of car show every weekend or something, we're doing an AACA event this coming weekend. We'll bring 3 different Shelbys, and because I'll have everyone drive something. And we see a lot of young kids there between, I would say, 5 and 16, taking pictures, especially if I bring an exotic car. I have a unique Porsche, and when I bring that, I get kids just all over it. We have a Ford GT, an early 2017, and everybody's taking pictures of it, and they ask questions that are very put together. They understand, like, can you tell me about the carbon fiber body? Can you tell me about the wheels, or how does this vehicle handle? And I'm really impressed that the next generation of kids, they're really involved. Now, maybe they don't fall in love with a Honda Civic, unless I guess some of the tuner kids do, or a Kia Niro or something, but they do fall in love with the performance cars. And that's why Nissan has the Z car, which I'm reviewing, or you'll see a lot of different cars. A lot of trucks and cars are really, really popular, like the TRX, the Bronco Raptor. I mean, so you start thinking about all these different vehicles, and these kids can spout off the specs. It's pretty cool.
Back in the day when I used to write a column called Next Collectible, and it was about what I think would be collectible in 25, 30 years. Hard to, you never know what it is, but it was fun to write. But what I used to do is every week we would, like the manufacturers bring you a new car, and I would always go up to the school where my daughter was attending school and allow her class to come out and see some of the cool cars that we would get, Vipers and Prowers,
good idea,
and everything, and help expose them to that. And I remember I had a Viper, and the teacher said, oh my God, don't touch the car, stand on the curb, don't do anything. I said, absolutely not. Climb in the car, hold the steering wheel, don't be afraid of it. You're not going to hurt it. And oh my God, you just saw those kids. It was like that you just gave them the best candy in the world. And girls and boys, I mean, they were just all over it. So I think that the more exposure everyone has, the better that they are. And if they do like cars, they're going to love your reviews, because you really take time with each car and you talk about it. And there's things that you'll like. It's got this cute little design piece on the side. It has no functionality whatsoever, but it makes it look stylish. And I love that. I said, that's very true. Nobody would probably point that out, but I did like that.
Thank you.
If someone was going to go out and buy a car today, what would be the best purchase someone could make? And I know that's a pretty big, you got daily drivers, you got cars in a garage. If the average household, average mom and dad with a couple of kids want to go out and buy a good, reliable vehicle, what direction would you send them in?
Well, there's a lot of factors. I get that question a lot. As a matter of fact, the first sentence in my 3rd book was, what's the best car? I get that question all the time. And it comes down to a lot of factors. So first off, how much can you afford? Are you leasing or are you buying? What are your needs? Like, I have a girlfriend who bought a little VW Beetle when they came out, and she was a massage therapist. I'm like, how are you gonna get the table in there? She bought the car. It was a real challenge. She made it fit, but I'm saying you don't think about your lifestyle and what you're doing. I mean, there's a lot of great product out there. If you're looking at something as a collectible, are you going to own it for 10 years? Or are you going to keep it for 3 and you kind of get bored with vehicles? Then that a lease might make sense. The rule is based on mileage, whether you lease or buy. If you drive more than 15,000 miles per year, then you should own it. If you drive less than 10,000 miles per year, you should own it. So the sweet spot is between 10 and 15,000 miles. That's when you lease, because it comes 10, 12, or 15,000 miles. If you are not within that window, own it, because otherwise you're leaving money on the table, or it's costing you dramatically more. So don't let a sales guy or a sales girl or a person convince you into something you really don't want, because that's very common. Their goal is to close the sale. Now, we're having a chip shortage right now. That ain't going to go away till like 2024. And I'm getting this information direct from top of the heap CEOs at companies across the board. I don't want to say any names. I won't name names. But if you said, hey, listen, I need a car. I want to own it for a while. I need it for transportation. My kids are growing. Their lifestyle's changing. Maybe they'll go to college. I want to keep this thing. What do I do? I would honestly suggest looking at the longest warranty that you can find. And there's 3 companies, Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis. Love the Genesis line. Those 3 are Korean brands. They're built here in the USA, and they all have 10-year, 100,000-mile warranties. Now, if you don't want that, you got to look at reliability. And this is where it goes 50-50. Every manufacturer makes phenomenal cars. And sometimes things go down the line and you're like, what did they build? I got the lemon. So that's just luck of the draw. As far as resale value, you can never go wrong with Honda and Toyota products. They all include all the safety products. Personally, I like Ford products. That's what I like, the Ford trucks. If you're looking at trucks, I think Ford builds the best truck. That's what we have. Ram, I would think, builds an excellent truck, although I've been driving the GMC Denali Ultimate, which I really like. That's also on my website. So, I mean, there's a lot of good, Toyota makes trucks, Nissan makes trucks. And so, I mean, I like German brands also. I think the Germans build phenomenal cars. If you are very specific and like a certain ride experience, nothing matches German cars. I have Porsches. I've owned many Audis and BMWs and Minis. Huge Mini fan. Love the Mini. Not the Mini E. It's not my thing. But a gas-powered manual transmission. What a great car. Both my kids had them. Shelby's had 2 of them. My son's had 3 of them. His were all John Cooper Works cars, which is a performance model. Both kids had nothing but manual transmissions, because that's what I taught them to do, because you cannot text and drive when you have a manual transmission. Not well, anyhow.
And that's very true. And I tried very hard to teach my daughter to drive a manual car. I failed. I could not.
You just need someone else to do it. Seriously.
Probably
either
true.
They listen to you or not. You get a total stranger on the street with like a Toyota Yaris, just like the absolute no power. You don't want to learn on power because it just messes you up. You don't want to learn on a Corvette or
That's
a Camaro.
why I started the Corvette and had to take her off of that.
Right, because it's too much power and they don't understand how to slip a clutch. So I learned how to drive on a 79 Mustang, which is the guy I ended up dating from way back in the early conversation. But once you learn to slip a clutch, it's like, this is easy. And nowadays, you don't even have to do that. The new manual transmissions in a Honda Civic makes it so the car doesn't roll back when the clutch is engaged. I'm like, what? And it rev matches. I'm like, oh, that's so fun. I love the heel and toe downshift. You can't do any of that. So it now does everything for you. It's kind of sad. They took away the fun of driving.
They did. What do you think in our hobby? What is the most important message we should be carrying out there to support? And you are with all different groups, from new cars to restoration to everything. Is there a basic message that the hobby should be listening to? Is there some unity we should all have? And what is it?
Stay away from the traditional media. Start looking at social media. Start looking at what's going on. You need to connect with people where they live. If you want young kids that are getting involved, or to get them involved, you got to post on sites where they can find the data and they can come to the events. Tell them they're welcome, bring your friends, make it seem welcoming, stop being old and stodgy, because that sort of turns people away. I go to a cruise night every night of the week. Literally, there's one here in Buffalo every night of the week. So when I go, I always bring my kids. I see a lot of people bring their little kids, but you need to make it available to everyone. That's one thing. When you think about traditional media and you think about the TV shows, the problem with shows like anything on Motor Trend is, and they have some good stuff, but it seems like if you don't have a flat brim hat, tattoos and piercings, or gauge earrings, you just don't fit into the business. And the funny thing is that's not true. And unfortunately, every single show has, and believe me, I've auditioned for a bazillion of their hosting jobs. And they're like, well, we kind of want you to like cover in tattoos down your neck and piercings. And I'm like, that's not me. That's, I'm a real car enthusiast, and the real car enthusiasts, we are watching racing. So you can, if you want to go to traditional, you have to advertise where people live. And that's true in anything. I don't know if you're selling food, you're selling a car enthusiast side, they have to know where to find you. Because remember, those people that are buying these collectible cars are people that remember what they had in the 80s or the 90s when they were in high school. And they go, oh, did you see that car? Go buy whatever it is, fill in the blank. Those people have money now because either their kids are in college, they've created a career, maybe they've bought and sold cars, whatever it might be, they're now looking for that car. But if they don't know you exist, they may not know about AACA or the Sports Car Club of America or the SEMA show, which they've done a good job bringing people in, especially on their Friday night events. But the industry in itself has to open up to that. The car manufacturers are starting to figure it out, a little slow to the draw, and certain ones slower than others, but they know there's an enthusiast group out there, and they know once they get you, they got you. Look at Mini Takes the States, perfect example. Bring all Mini owners back together. Subaru has an off-road. Bronco does the off-rodeo. Jeep has a whole thing just for Jeep off-roading, and they do it like Moab and a bunch of cool places. So as you see, Porsche brings people to Le Mans, or they'll bring them to Sebring. And so you start seeing Pebble Beach. They need to open up and find people where they live, because if you're not, they have no idea you even exist.
Now, let's talk about collector cars for one moment. If someone's going out to buy their very first collector car, that they can, whatever it is that they want to get involved in, it's their very first car. Let's say they have a $50,000 budget.
It's a big budget. Yeah.
It's a big budget. That's a big, but most cars, I mean, if you're watching any of the auctions, they're 30, 45,000 all day long.
I watch every auction. Yes.
What would you tell them to buy? What would be your advice to that first time car buyer?
Okay. First thing, always buy what you love. You got to love it. And because if the market falls out on it, which can happen, you have something you love and you really don't care. So I'll use myself as an example. I love the Mustangs. If I was going to buy a Mustang, I would buy it because I love it. Now, before I would buy one, I go to websites like Haggerty, does a great job with the values, tells you what's going on in the auctions. They'll also tell you if the trajectory is up or down. So if you're like, I don't know if I want a coupe or a fastback or a convertible, do I want to do a 6-cylinder? Probably not, but it depends on your budget. I would say a 289. And then you go, well, like there's 3 different versions. There's a 2-barrel, 4-barrel, or a GT, or you can go Shelby, but then you're really into the big buck. And that, hence our daughter's name was Shelby, but we knew Carol well. But when you start looking at that, you have to start looking at your budget. And when you start looking to buy, I know you get an itchy trigger finger, because everyone does. Before you make a buy of whatever it is, maybe you want an MG, maybe you want an old Datsun Z car, which I've had those too, whatever it is, a Corvair. There's a lot of really, really cool cars. I don't know, maybe you want a Packard. Those are a little expensive, but maybe you got access to one in someone's garage you've kind of been eyeing up. I always suggest hiring an appraiser to come and look at it. If you can't find them, you can reach out to me, but there's an appraisers group that does nothing more than that. The AACA has people they recommend, which is the Antique Automobile Club of America. All these groups, or even the specialty groups, like if it was a Mustang, you can contact someone from the Mustang Club of America, or the Shelby Club of America, or there's a Camaro Club, there's a Corvette Club. Have someone that you trust, a certified appraiser, go and look at the vehicle, and they will come back. And I did that when I bought my Porsche, because I knew enough, but not enough. So I had found a guy in Colorado Springs to go check the car out. He knew the previous owner. He knew the car. He knew what to look for. He told me what I'm going to have to invest in. Told me about paint quality, glass quality. Hey, did you know that these vehicles have this inherent? You'll need to go buy a special tool to take the wheels off of this car. Those are the kind of things you wouldn't even know unless you had an appraiser who really knows that business. So whatever it is you're looking for, and there's a million phenomenal choices. And I love really cool vehicles too. Like ambulances are huge right now, fire trucks, military vehicles. I would be so cool to have like a H1, like a real military one. That'd be cool just because it's different. But if you were going to buy one, if I was going to buy one, I'd go find a certified appraiser to go through that thing. And yeah, it's going to cost you, but that's what they do. And they'll help you buy what works for you, because I'm telling you, there is nothing worse than finding out that car was a piece of trash or it has a negative history, which is very common in a lot of collector cars. Like we've had many Cobras, real Cobras over the years. And one of the things we do is we check with the Cobra registrar and find out if this car has what we call questionable history. In other words, because the only way to find the vehicle identification number was it was either in the door jambs, on the door hinges itself, on the rear trunk hinge, on the front hood, or inside on the frame. So if the car was wrecked at any point, what would happen was you could say, I got the door. And someone else says, well, I got the frame. So I build a car off the door, which you can find all the parts, right? So you make a car and you say it's the real deal, and I sell it to you. Now you've spent $900,000 on a car. We're talking a lot of money here, right? People do it every day. This happens every day. As a matter of fact, I just heard of one just the other day. So now the person bought the car thinking this is the car. You go to the Shelby Club registry and they go, oh, that's funny because Jim says he has that car too. Oh, now you got a lawsuit on your hands and you get to go to court and defend your car versus their car. And the judge makes the call and it's not reversible. So you could basically end up with a pile of aluminum. So, and that would be very upsetting because then you can't sell it because everybody knows it's what they call a marked car. So make sure you do your homework beforehand. That's not very common across the board. Very common with like Ferrari. I'm a judge at the Amelia Island Concours. I'm also going to be doing the Detroit Grand Prix Concours. So if you see me, just stop me and say hello. But at Amelia Island, we had a race car that was Glickenhouse's car. And he said this car, we were told we couldn't judge it because the car was literally destroyed and Ferrari marked it off their list as a legitimate car. He bought all the parts from some fan who saw that the car was wrecked, picked up as many pieces as he could, put them in his pickup truck and saved them, and then turned around and sold them to Glickenhaus, who then built a car all around it. So this car we saw looked pristine, like a show car. Like if you didn't know any better, that's the real deal. The real deal doesn't exist according to Ferrari. And so he knew that. And he disclosed that to us, but he also disclosed he wasn't going to show it, wasn't going to get judged. So, I mean, that's kind of interesting things that happen, mostly race cars, mostly super collectible cars, but it can happen with literally anything. So if I have a Ford Mustang identification number and I build a car off of nothing and you claim to have that car because you have the door tag, we got a problem. So that's why you need it appraised.
That's awesome advice. Tell me of all the things, and again, it's huge, but do you have one particular thing that is the most memorable for you that always stands out, or a story that you like to tell, humorous or otherwise, that it just not that it defines you, but it's always a fun story to tell?
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, I do. I have quite a few of them. And one of them I want to use on VinWiki, which is one of my other favorite sites to listen to. But I'll give you two quickies. One, when I was at the Detroit Auto Show as a journalist, I'm there with my husband back in the day of pagers, because the cell phones are so expensive. You get paged and you find a pay phone and call them. I got a call from a Chicago number, and I didn't think anything of it. And I called and I said, hello. And they said it was Harpo Productions, which was Oprah. And it wasn't her personally, but it was her team asking me to be on the show as their automotive expert. And that turned into a whole relationship from 1996 till she shut the show down. Now, whether you like her or not, I will tell you she's very inspiring. And I learned a lot from working with her. I've been on the road with her on the Live Your Best Life tour. Amazing experience. I didn't get the Rachel Ray treatment. I didn't get the Dr. Phil, the Dr. Oz show, but it helped me a lot. And it helped me look at life in a different way. That's one. But my favorite story to tell, and I've told it a few times, is my son was born in 1993. I'll just tell you when. December 1990, early December 93. So on Labor Day weekend, remember early September, just a couple months before, I decided I wanted to race our Cobra, the CSX 2051. It's a 51st car built. It's an independent competition car. It was an SVRA type event. It's run by a group that's no longer around. It was at Lime Rock, Connecticut. And at the time, ESPN had just started. They called it The Deuce. And they would cover all the SCCA and vintage stuff. And they came out because they were in Connecticut based and they thought this was cool, racing. Oh, this is cool, girl racing a Cobra. I said, and I'm pregnant. And they're like, what? See, this is me, opportunity. Boom, they're over there with the cameras, mics in my face. I'm interviewing, right? And the other people in the group knew I was pregnant and they really didn't like it. And I'm still friends with all these guys. And I said, well, here's your two choices. So I told the other racers, I said, here's your two choices. Either you see me coming, you move over and pass, and I'll pass you wide to make you feel better. Or if you're going to pass me, just pass me wide. I said, you're not going to hit this car. It's a freaking collectible. It's worth a ton of money. And this is 93. So they weren't like millions of dollars yet. Of course, you always sell a car short. We all do. And I wore a larger driving suit. So after the race is over, I got interviewed. The fuel pump failed on the car and down the main street. So I parked it off straight, everything waited. I think I got cameras on me and the whole 9 yards. And afterwards, the people from the vintage group came by to talk to me. And they said, you can't race while you're pregnant. I said, really? At the time, I pull out my very thick general competition rules and I go, where in this rule book does it say I can't? And they said, it's going to on Tuesday morning. Now let me wait till the fast forward part. My son loves this. My husband is the factory driver for Tony Ave. Tony Ave is a famous racer. He's a good friend of ours. He and his wife, Julie, we've all been in the business since we were kids. Tony is a championship driver in multiple things, including snowmobiles. He's been on the SCCA, Sports Car Club of America competition board since I think he said the early 90s. So we're at VIR and it's raining like crazy. VIR is Virginia International Raceway, one of our favorite tracks. And we're just kind of shooting the stuff, right? And I love the story because I said to Tony, I go, so you said you've been on the competition board for a long time? No, we're good friends. I mean, he's been to my daughter's wedding. We're really good friends. He goes, yeah. He goes, why? I go, I'm going to test your memory. I go, I don't know, somewhere back in the early 90s, there was some girl who was racing and I think it was a Cobra and she was pregnant, like really pregnant. And he goes, oh my God, I remember that story. That girl was crazy. I don't remember her name, but we had to put an emergency meeting in Tuesday morning and we had to put the rules in that you can't race while pregnant. I go, when you're find out you're pregnant, when the doctor says you're pregnant, he goes, I don't know. He goes, that's how we wrote the rules. When the doctor says you're pregnant, you're off the track. I said, huh. I go, you don't remember her name? He goes, I do not. I said, it was me. I think I could have knocked him over with a feather. It was awesome. It's one of my favorite stories. I'm going to tell the story for VinWiki. I just haven't got down there because there's a little more to it, but it was great. It was one of those great stories you go, So my son, who's now 28 years old, you can do the math, he loves to tell everyone that he's been racing since he's been in my stomach. And he was a champion go-kart racer. At the time, we just couldn't afford 3 of us racing, but they're still all involved in cars. They're all phenomenal drivers. We're a drop point for legendary motor car at our facility. And so we had a Countach 5000 in the driveway, a Lamborghini Deep 007 car. We had a right-hand drive Skyline, a bunch of other Porsches. So they needed someone, he's tall and lanky. They needed someone to get in the trailer who could get in the car and who could drive right-hand drive. Boom, he's in the car. He had it figured out. He got in that Countach, the doors open funky. To get in, you have to be able to move your body and get in, and the pedals are super close together on those cars. So if you ever think you want a Countach, you need to drive one. Look at Curated, another great website. It's totally a different animal. And I've met all these people because of cars, just phenomenal young people that are involved. The guy from VinWiki, Curated, and all younger guys who have made a living off of it. And they're super passionate and have brought people in with them, which is good for our business. But he, no problem, got in the trailer, went down, got the next one. So it was kind of cool. My daughter was like, I'm impressed, man. He just got in that thing. I go, he's a car guy. He has no choice.
Kind of some of our closing thoughts. You've written some books. You have some product. Tell us about your books. Tell us about some of the things you've created.
There's one of them. It's called Driving Ambitions. It's a how to get involved in racing. It's my first book. Actually, I was pregnant with my daughter on the back. Yeah, and even, Carol Shelby even has a quote, has an endorsement on the back of that book. And then I wrote another book, but it's out of print. This is the third book, Lauren Fix's Guide to Loving Your Car. You can get all these on Amazon or on my website, Car Coach Reports. Yeah, that third book really did well, but writing a book is a lot more work than people understand. I mean, it's long nights. I pull a lot of all-nighters. Will I write another one? Probably not. I say that every time. And then I came up with a product I brought to QVC. We sold out. And then QVC wanted me to make it in colors, but they wouldn't tell me what colors and they didn't want to pay more. So it sort of I sell it just online. It's called The Bag Fix. And that's the product here. They're made in Lancaster, New York. And what these are is they hang on the back of the headrest posts, and they hang over 50 pounds. No more dirty purse bottoms. It carries a bottle of wine, eggs, berries, whatever you want. There's hooks on it. And anything that's got a headrest with 2 posts, it'll fit inside. And those we've done well. I mean, they're all made here in the USA. Everything about it, the products we make, whether it's classic tube or otherwise, is USA manufactured, and even the raw materials. Yeah, it may cost us a little bit more, but you got to have it here from the USA.
Amen. Amen. Now, how do people follow you? Tell us about your program. Tell us about your website. How do they get in touch with you? Tell us everything.
Well, Car Coach Reports is right there. You can find me on YouTube. We're always putting up new content. I also put up on Friday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern, I put up a insightful piece, whether it be about the power grid, about the truth about electric cars, or maybe how not to get ripped off, or just things that you wouldn't think about that people don't talk about because they need to get this content. Flood damage cars, big story right now, keeps coming back up because people can't find cars and they end up buying flood damage cars. Literally any form of social media. I will just give you a few from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the normal ones. I have a lot of followers. I'm also on TikTok, Truth Social, Parlor, MeWe, Clout Hub, you name it. I'm on all of them. At Lauren Fix. It's LAURENFIX. And yes, I know you're going to ask, it's my real last name. I married the right guy 30 some years ago.
Your maiden name, Jonas, but yet you're not related to the famous singers, correct?
I might be. I have no idea. We've never really been able to track that down. They would be like cousins of cousins. It'd be kind of weird to go, hi, you don't know me. But I think we're related. They'd be like, yeah, go away. Hit delete on that inquiry. Now, if I ever run into them, well, I'll mention it. But you never. I've met some really, really amazing people that out of the blue through other people. Like I just recently met Sebastian Gorka, who bought a '66 Mustang notchback, 289, literally the 11,000 original miles. And a friend said, you need to meet Lauren Fix. So I got a chance to talk to him. I've met David Bellavia, Medal of Honor recipient. I've met some really wonderful people because of the auto industry. And what's neat, it doesn't have to do with politics. It doesn't make a difference where you stand. It doesn't make a difference anything, how much you make, your history. People just like the fact that you're into cars and you're part of the family. And that's what I think automotive has that no other industry has.
And you're right. A car person is very approachable. You ask them about their car, and man, you better plan on standing there for a little while because they're going to tell you everything about it. They're so happy that you asked the question.
Yes. So yes, it's so true. And my husband, when he got into cars, his family wasn't into cars. He went to a car show with a buddy of his, and they saw this little orange notchback, 65 notchback GT. It was just a little teeny Mustang. And they started talking to the guy and again, started telling all about the car. So fast forward, he sees a car for sale on Facebook Market and says, there's no way this is the car. It's the original owner who he talked to when he was in high school. He said, it's time to let it go. And my husband bought the car. He was so happy. So we're putting brake lines on it. And, of course, we're putting new brakes on it and changing the fluids. And he says, just let me come by and see it. I go, anytime you want. So it's kind of cool how that happens.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Lauren, thank you so much. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for all your insight. I really enjoyed having you on the program today. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And if you have any questions, just reach out to me on social media. I do answer my own email.
Okay.